depending on what data set you look at and how you slice it and dice it, somewhere around 10% price appreciation. I've seen numbers as high as 13.5 price appreciation, on a more moderately priced property. So let's go through this. Why do we have so few homes on the market? Let's just talk about the supply side. In the last 10 years, well, let's put it this way. There's been a 10-year plus years of underbuilding, new constructions. There just haven't been enough homes built to take up the demand plus future demand. And future is now here. I'll get into this in a second, but we're going to talk about the whole millennial thing and why that demand is there. So the future is here, and there's big demand. But there's been 10 years plus of underbuilding. There's a lot of reasons for that. Just to give you some statistics to back that up. In the 70s, in the United States, there were 11 million homes built. In the 80s, there were, 9.8 million homes built. In the 2000, right, there were 12.6 million homes built. And then in the 2010 to 2019, there were 6.5 million homes built. So you see about, we've had this huge decrease in the number of homes built. And so it's really affected just what's available. Couple things have created that. Why were there so few homes built over the last 10 years? Well, I will say that it's partly just being conservative. The people, a lot of people got hurt in the housing bubble. Builders, developers, contractors, obviously, and they've been much more conservative. The ones that made it through, and then there were a lot that didn't make it through, meaning there just were less home builders in the entire country. One of the things that happened was the cost of lots, meaning finished, ready to build lots. So what happened was at the end of the pandemic, we had all this oversupply of vacant lot, ready to build lots. Well, now those all have been used up, and they've been used up now for a few years. And the process to bring new lots, new building sites out of the ground, it's a slow process. Think a year, 2 years, 3 years. Permitting, construction, investment, and again, millions of dollars of investment to get these subdivisions built out. And people are being conservative on their investment. Interesting thing that happened in the mid, let's say 2013 to 2018, there were a lot of stories about the lack of skilled tradespeople. And people that follow the news, you probably heard this. Well, that trend really caught up to us. What happened was at the end of the housing boom, and at the beginning of the housing bust, let's think 2009, those jobs just kind of went away. A lot of people left the trades, the skilled trades, electricians, plumbers, framers, roofers, all those things. And there's a story from 2013 here I have here from Forbes talking about, let's see. So the headline is, and this is from 2013, so think about this: American skilled trades dilemma, shortage loom as most in demand group of workers by ages. And what happened is over the years here, the tradespeople just were getting older and older, and there were less tradespeople coming into the industry. When I talk to home builders or any of the groups that do surveys with home builders here locally, myself, or nationally with some of these other folks, when they talk to home builders and say, okay, what are your challenges right now? How come you're not building more homes, right? We're all saying, why aren't you building more homes? We need more homes. They're just saying, well, costs, let's put cost aside. That's a whole other conversation. Their costs have gone through the roof. but labor, the just skilled construction labor is in high demand. And so they just can't basically get people to build the homes as fast as they would like. So that's one part. Okay, so
Tego, let me
yeah, yeah, please.
a recap here.
So, I mean, I just hit one subject on supply. So anyway, but yeah, I know it's
well, you're throwing out some things here that I think no one is talking about as far as the market, and I think they're so on point that I think they bear repeating, and it's very troubling because this is sort of a cultural, behavioral, social shift that is creating the problem, not necessarily anything having to do with the housing industry in general. The cost of the lots going up because, well, planning, zoning, and then you have LEED certified, being environmentally friendly, et cetera, et cetera. That has driven all the cost up for that. The cost of materials going up. Obviously, that is creating a huge housing supply crunch. Fewer homes built. I thought that was an absolutely staggering statistic when you talk about, and this population still grows and grows, but you're talking about the shrinkage decade to decade to decade. And that is very troubling. But, here's something that really stands out, and that's the retirement of tradespeople.
yeah.
That to me is right on point because my father, who's in construction, is dealing with that very thing. I mean, he's gone out and actually worked on jobs himself just because you can't find people and you got to get the job done. You're under contract to get them done. So, folks, when you're looking at the reasons why housing supply is not where it is, Tego just nailed it there right ahead. Let's continue.
Well, and that's just one piece of it. And I think that's just it. I see these stories, especially in, let's be honest, the mainstream media, where they pick one little thing to say, this is why. Well, I'll probably say perfect storm 20 times here today, but there really is. There's a bunch of things that have just trended that have brought us to the point where here in Albuquerque, let me put this in perspective. As of today, we have, let's say, 800 homes for sale on the market, active for sale. Based on the current demand in our market, about 11 to 1,200 homes selling per month in the Albuquerque area, we could have, let's say, 5,000 homes, maybe even 6,000 before we get to what we call a buyer's market, where the supply is high and the demand is low. We're so far away from that. So again, it is not a good situation in the sense of the way prices are going up so fast. One thing that has been happening, this supply thing, this did not just happen because of COVID, and I've been saying that over and over again. This has been
people saying that, Tego?
The what?
Are people saying that COVID?
Some people are. It's like, oh, COVID is driven. It's like, no. This has been coming on for a long time.
We had this problem way before 2 years ago, I remember, because we saw just the declining number of homes that were there. I mean, you've been tracking this for a long time.
Yeah, well, and COVID now has exacerbated that. So let me give you some stuff here. So COVID kept a lot of people from selling their homes in 2020 that may have sold, right? You think about the senior housing world. This is a quote from an article in the senior housing world. Senior housing occupancy falls to lowest rate on record. You know what that means is all those people that maybe were going to be going into senior housing last year, they stayed in their home. They didn't sell their home. Those homes never came on the market. And we'll see if they do. A majority of homeowners in America are baby boomers, and many of them are now reluctant to move or downsize. So again, it's just one of those other things that definitely were triggered somewhat by the pandemic. Another thing that's happened over the last decade is we've had these really ultra low interest rates, historically low. I mean, even the 4%, right? We were going, oh my God, these rates are crazy. They're never going to be this low again. Well, here we are at 3%. But anyway, But that incentivized many homeowners to stay in their homes much longer. I'm getting this quote from a story I read, and I wish I knew who it was because I should be crediting them for it. But that incentivized many homeowners to stay in their homes longer than they would have in the past. They're clinging to their cheap mortgages, right? The low rates have encouraged many homeowners who bought the home not to sell, and they're just staying. And one of the statistics to back that up is since 2008, the median tenure for somebody staying in their home is 3 years longer today than it was just in 2008. To give you an example, in Albuquerque, the stat is 10 years is how long people stay in their homes. I've seen another one that said it was 13 years. And the point is people just aren't selling as quick. It used to be like 7 years. Now people are just not turning over. Again, that's making it those homes again never coming on to the market. So that's some of it on the demand side. Let's talk about the supply side. Excuse me, that was the supply side. Now let's talk about the demand side. Eddie, any other thoughts on that whole supply side thing?
Could you repeat that, Tego? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Any other thoughts on this whole supply side issue for housing?
No, not really. I think, when we start to think about the things that you've been tracking and the reasons that people, sort of stick more of their own reasoning into this, it just shows this lack of knowledge and expertise that's out there. And I think that's got to be scary for a lot of people who are jumping into the home buying market at this point. And if you're getting weird comments as if someone knows about something, the best thing that someone could ever say, as I always said, is, I don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. It just is. And here's the problem that inevitably happens with this. What else is that person telling you if they're telling you that COVID is the reason for the shortage? So, someone who's seasoned, who's been through cycles, it's one of the reasons why I literally tell every single person who's interested in real estate or buying, selling, or even in their careers to call Tego and Tracy. They just love the game. They love real estate. They love what it is. They love how, people can make money, but you've got to be informed and you've got to have a passion for that information. And that's certainly something that you've had, Tego. And I'm glad you're bringing this because I don't even know that I've gotten to this level. I'm a, numbers.
Let me give you one other thing that I
good.
I don't know why it just went right over my head. I didn't even bring it up. Was speaking of misinformation. I hear a ton of people going, "Oh, but the foreclosures are coming, the forbearance, everybody's going to be, all these homes are going to flood the market." Well, one of the supply challenges has been that we've had this foreclosure moratorium since the beginning of the pandemic, which is great. I get it. I understand, help people out that were basically unable to work for stuff out of their control, right? We've got these forbearance plans, which are keeping people in their home that, maybe would have been selling. But, on a forbearance plan, they're not paying their mortgage. They're able to stay in their home without a monthly payment. Now, that's going to catch up to them at some point. They're going to have to make good on it at some point. But there are a lot of people that have been not making a payment for a year or more. So again, that's another COVID-related reason for the short supply is this, again, these foreclosures, distress sales not coming on the market. There's been a few, but it's very limited, very, very limited. It's any of the mortgages that were backed by any of the government plans, those homes are not being foreclosed. Okay, let's talk about demand. Homeownership rate dropped to a pretty big low back. I'm going to pull up this chart here from the Fed. They do some great charts, and so just give you some perspective here. In 2004, 2005, this was an all-time high. Home ownership rate in the United States was 69%. That was a really high number. However, what happened was it dropped to a low in 2016 of 62%, which is really, it was a historic low. And I remember back at that time, there was all those stories. Oh, these millennials, these young people, they are not going to want to own a home. They're going to want to live in the city. They're going to want to commute to work in the Uber, and they're never going to buy a house, and they're never going to buy a car, and they're going to get their DoorDash delivered and all this. Well, in 2016, we saw a reversal. And ever since then, we've had this increase in the home ownership rate. People started to come into the fact that home ownership is great. There's tons of advantage, not just the financial, but there is a lot of other reasons, just American dream, that whole conversation. I won't go into all that right now, but so ever since 2016, we have seen an increase in buyer demand around the country. Another part of this demand story is something I just mentioned, which is the demographics. The millennial generation is the largest demographic generation ever in American history, bigger than us boomers. What do I call myself? I'm a tailing boomer. I'm a little older, a little younger boomer. But anyway, they are the biggest generation ever. And they're right now in their prime home buyer, first-time home buyer years. And there's Logan Mashami, who's one of the economists, housing economists I follow. He's been talking about this for 2 years, that it's coming, come to 2020 through 2024. We're going to have all this big demographic of people coming into home buying age, and that's what's happened. They've moved into home buying age, and that has driven demand a lot. Can't talk about home buyer demand without talking about interest rates in 2020. Eddie, as you know, interest rates dropped to sub 3% for 30-year mortgages at the beginning of the pandemic. That was driven by a lot of reasons we won't go into. Maybe Chris can go into that. But the whole thing is interest rates dropped, which really drove demand. People went, well, shoot, I'm going to take advantage of this, And of course, there was a refi boom at the same time because of that. So affordability, although prices, have been climbing now since about 2012, affordability is still very good when you account for the interest rates.
I think the affordability, as we've mentioned, we've had a discussion, is one of the things that is at an all-time high, despite the rocket, if you will, escalations in year-over-year prices. We saw 18%, if I'm not mistaken, in Rio Rancho. Albuquerque, I think, has seen somewhere around 11, 12% year-over-year, even during the pandemic. You look at these numbers, and that's driven by those interest rates, but they've created a level of affordability that we didn't have in the aughts and even in the 90s.
Here, get this. So just a side note, I posted this on my Facebook. I post a lot of housing stats on my Facebook feed just because that's what I like to do. But I took a quick look at May so far, and last year, May was a pretty weird time, as we all know that we all lived through it. But May of 2020 was kind of crazy. But the average price back then, this is average now, this is not appreciation, but just for perspective here, average price was $252,000. This year, same time, it's $316,000, 25% higher. The average price up 25%. It's a very small slice. Please don't call me and say, hey, you said home prices went up 25%. That's not what I said. What I said is average price for May went up 25%. And what happens, I do get feedback sometimes from the radio show. People are like, well, you said this and you said that. Well, look, these are general numbers, right? Every home is different. That's one thing that's very unique in real estate, is every product is unique into itself. It's not like buying a car where you can get the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again, right? Every home is different. All this data that I put out there, it just, it's going to be specific to your home, your neighborhood, your side of the street even, right? So, yeah, obviously condition, all that stuff matters. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm trying to give general ideas of what's going on in the market, which I love to do.
If anybody looks at Zillow or any of those other places, people will see the huge price discrepancy in two houses across the street from one another by the simple nature of the fact that the two houses, one has age, the other one doesn't.
Yep. Okay, Eddie, it could, views, right? Think about Albuquerque on the west side. Certain sides of the street on the west side, you've got the east mountain views from your back patio. Same house across the street has got the western sun on their back patio in the afternoon. And it's just, there is a difference between those two properties. They could be identical in every other way. So again, you have to look at it on a house by house basis. Okay, let's get back to this demand thing. So the demographics thing, I hit on that. Let's talk about the fact that there's a lot of people that were on the edge of buying, had kind of been on their list, let's say, pre-pandemic or pre-March last year. And a lot of people jumped into the housing market that maybe thought it was a couple years out. Low interest rates, maybe they were renters, tired of living in an apartment. I'm sure living in an apartment during COVID was awful. And so they jumped into the market. So we definitely, there was a conversation, and it's still out there, that we're borrowing buyers from the future. That was out there last year. And there may be some of that. But there's still plenty of buyers out there. Another thing that happened, obviously, is, well, this is more pandemic driven. Well, definitely pandemic driven. People are working from home. They're schooling from home. They need more space. They want more space. They're spending way more time at home. They're cooking at home. People are using their kitchens that maybe they never used before. Stuff like that. So that definitely created a need for people to move, and a want for people to move. So that's driven demand. Something that doesn't get reported much, and I want to talk about this, is the second home sales. Eddie, I don't know if you knew this, but second home sales are booming in the U.S. right now.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? I mean, you think about this, again, these low interest rates, people, the reality is people that have a better income, have a better job, have done better through the pandemic. They can afford to buy the second home. Now they're thinking about buying that second home. Let's talk about Angel Fire, something you're very familiar with, Eddie. Right. I talked with a realtor yesterday that works the Angel Fire market here in New Mexico. And he said it is like this weird, I mean, he said as soon as a home comes on the market, he has 20 people he could call in Dallas, and they would make an offer on that home sight unseen right now in Angel Fire. There are so many people that want a second home, and Angel Fire is booming like it never has before. And that's in a lot of second home markets. Not, that's just one small example here locally.
Well, I'll tell you, I own land up there, and I have a lot, and I've gotten several inquiries from people. And I'll tell you, I'm going to wait for the construction cost to just totally drop, and I'll go build my house for 40, 50 cents on the dollar. And I don't care if I have to wait a year or 5 years for that to happen. I'll get to capture all of the value of the upside of what they bought their house for based upon where my lot is. I mean, and that's a very lucky thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing that's happened just recently in the last month is the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, who backs so many mortgages in our country. They've actually put a premium, meaning they've increased interest rate for second home purchases. And when I say second home, it's vacation home. It's also investment properties. It's people have jumped into the investment property world too that may not have. And we could talk about, what rent prices have done. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But that has appreciated greatly as well. So there's a lot of information there about supply and demand. And I'll just do one last thing is,
Sure.
the old catch-22 thing, right, Eddie? You've got two contrary conditions. So, this is a quote from what's his name? Ralph from House. Anyway, he's another economist that I follow. Anyway, so he said every additional home that gets pulled off the market, meaning, somebody decides not to sell, that incentivize someone else not to sell their house because now they can't find anything. So we are in this kind of, self-reinforcing cycle where, well, I want to buy, but I can't find anything. So I'm not going to put my home on the market, which will free it up for somebody else who wants to put their home on the market. So we're in this kind of vicious cycle right now. I will tell you one thing. There's been a lot of predictions that we will see an increase in the number of homes coming into later this year. Just this week, we did see a pretty, I want to say decent, but we did see an increase in the number of homes on the market in the Albuquerque area. But I will tell you, it's held pretty steady now for a couple months even, where, we've got 400 or so on and 400 or so off every week in the Albuquerque area. So a lot of info there.
A lot of info and a lot of good stuff. Tego is always available. All you have to do is call their team, 505-448-8888. That's 505-448-8888. He just gave you a good tidbit there on Fannie and Freddie. That just recently happened. You have to be paying attention to what's going on. But jacking up those rates on people who have investment and second homes, that's exactly what he's talking about. You would get that nowhere else. Also, if your realtor is telling you the prices are increasing because of COVID, maybe you should recheck who your realtors are. I'm just going to let you know that. Get some good information. Get people who take this game seriously. This is your life. It's the biggest purchase you'll ever make, and you're on the hook for 15 to 30 years, regardless of where you go and what you do. So don't make that mistake, and make sure that you secure your financial future as well. Anything else, Tego?
Yeah, I just a couple headlines this week. Interest rates went up. Forbearance trends are going in the right direction. There was just a big release from the companies that track that data. So things are going in the right direction for people that are in forbearance. Credit availability, that was another story that came out this week, meaning the availability of mortgages has loosened up a little bit. It did tighten up a little bit last year at the beginning of the pandemic, but that's loosened up a little bit. And don't think we're not talking like going back to 2004 mortgages. We're just saying it's loosened up a little bit. So that's good news.
All right. Good stuff, Tego. Tego, one more time. How can people reach you?
The Venturi Realty Group, Keller Williams Realty. We are at 505-448-8888 or welcomehomeabq.com. Thanks, Eddie.
All right. Thank you, Tego. Thanks for supporting the station. Thanks for supporting our listeners here on this radio station. And they will like to support you by picking up the phone and giving you a call, 505-448-8888. Let's go ahead and return. And when we return, we're going to repair that credit with Mike Ramos. He's next, and then we're going to get you qualified with Chris Napier.
I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you